Yeah,
All right, everybody.
you're 50 kilo, you gotta really think you need a big soda.
Corn are not able to grow.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Sorry for the delay on the setup. Obviously, we're getting involved in some things we didn't usually get involved in, like microscopes and labs and all that good stuff. I seem to have, I think, enough microscopes for everybody, or pretty darn close. I have computers for almost everybody. I'm going to set up my pad as well when we go through the lab, so you'll have another computer. And during that exercise, we will learn a little bit about identifying insects. But before we get to that, I have to go through the lecture. So as this is a 4-hour class and we are 20 minutes already in, I'm going to literally fly through this as quickly as possible so that, hold on guys, sit down, I got it.
Thank you.
I'm just trying to talk and get people's attention, because usually when I talk, people are always reading this thing. So we're going to go through this, and then we're going to do the lab. My goal would be to have an hour and 30 minutes for the lab. That would be the goal, okay? I would be willing to stay an extra 30 minutes if you guys want to tonight to continue looking at your stuff. This is a fun activity. If you want to stay, it's up to you. I don't really care. I can break down everything else. So I'm going to get to the lecture first. We're going to go through entomology and nematology, and then we will go to the lab. And as far as a few sections, if I find that we're going a little heavy and long into the lab time, then I'm just going to start flipping, and then I'll say, oh, that's not as important as the lab. So I made too many slides, of course, as I usually do.
Just me on those.
You guys got one? Okay. And then...
Is that
Hey, we made it so you can write on it.
Is
There
it
you
good
go.
for us or bad?
Oh, this is good, I can see.
Huh? It's bad? The little white mist is bad? I should have brought in a Ziploc? Huh? They chew the leaves?
I brought some insects if people didn't bring any.
All right.
I got them over here in my jar. I hope to get to that and show you what I got in here. I just did a little bit of collecting yesterday and the day before. Here's a handout that we're going to reference during the lecture, so please be sure you have that. Don't flip ahead. We'll get to the pages that we're going to get to when we get there.
You need one. You need one. You need one.
Did you bring your book? I got one.
In your hair.
You got Hokus! You got Hokus!
I just came from the farm, it's still late, so I got
So really, we got plenty to look at today, and I guess we really just get right to it. So here we go. All right, guys, and of course, same with always. Got a lot of pictures today. You know, if any pictures intrigue you, just shout it out. We'll talk about it. So what we're talking about today, pretty simple. Entomology, and then nematology, and then we're going to do our lab exercise. We're going to start off by defining entomology, also what an arthropod is. We're going to get pretty heavy into the vocabulary again today, guys. And then what the definition of what an insect is, okay? A brief explanation of insect evolution. So I think this is super important to understand the orders and the differences between the insects, is understanding that some are older than others. They all kind of derived from one insect and have evolved and branched out from there. For just an understanding, like I did with the microorganisms, so you understand what started first and where things came from, right? The importance of entomology, why is it important? I like to push the science, and we're going to talk about numbers and biodiversity. The success of insects, obviously insects are very successful. And then we'll talk about the economic importance, that's to us. We'll also talk about general classification. In that section I'm going to be talking about the 31 orders of insects. It's kind of fun to go through it and go, oh, okay, there's this kind and there's this kind, and then it really helps you in identification when we get to the exercises on the side of the room. Because what I'm going to ask you guys to do today is actually identify at least 2 insects that you're not really all that familiar with, and identify it to order, and if we can do maybe the species would be real interesting. So, and the way you do that is by answering a few questions on a dichotomous key. which is simply, I have it all set up over there and we'll go through it together. I'll bring it up and we can go through it together and you can learn how to use it. It's a lot easier than the ones that I originally learned on, which were sheets and books and manuals, and now getting it online and understanding that you can just click and drop and it makes it a lot easier. We're going to talk about internal and external structures. I don't want to get too heavy into the anatomy, but I need you to understand that there's certain systems going on the inside of insects, just like we did with the plants. Life cycles, just like with plants and microorganisms. This is super important because, why would it be important to understand the life cycle of
Figure out
insects?
the best time to get
Yes, best time to get rid of them if you want to is to get them in those vulnerable stages of their life cycle. When they don't have armor plates on, when they're a little bit softer, when they're younger, they're eggs, okay? Roles of insects, we kind of know all those, but I just want to refresh. And then, of course, the ecology, the studying of them in the environment.
So these are all bad? There's nothing good about any specific thing?
What?
It's the child of a chicken.
She starts off like it's the third slide. It's already like, what? No, we're going to talk about beneficials. We're not actually going to talk about whether they're good or bad. We're just going to talk about where they evolved from, their mouth parts, what they do. Like I said, entomology is the study of insects, and a study of insects in the environment is a completely different study. Okay, so and insects relating to agriculture is more horticulture. Insect pathology, that kind of thing. That's not what we're getting into. We're talking about insects themselves and what they are and why they're there and what they do.
Stick with colors.
Stick with colors, it'd be fun.
A lot of nice colors up here.
Jiminy Christmas. Entomology is a branch of zoology, study of animals, right? Concerned with the study of insects. Okay. We can go ahead and no, we're not. We're going to define an arthropod, okay? Arthropod is an invertebrate animal with segmented exoskeleton and jointed appendages. Okay, so when you're thinking about an insect as an arthropod, when you think about maybe a centipede as an arthropod, a crab as an arthropod, anything that fits that invertebrate animal does not have a spine, and a segmented exoskeleton, which means its structure is on the outside of the animal, and there's jointed appendages where there are plates all over the body, and then there's certain joints of flexibility. Okay? An insect is defined as in the arthropod phyla. So the arthropod is actually a phylum down from kingdom, right? And we'll go through that a little bit later, but it's the phylum. It's just a way to categorize. All of these animals have a three-part body. So it's going to be a head, thorax, and abdomen. We'll get to that later. 3 pairs of jointed legs. 3 pairs meaning total 6 legs, right? So only insects have 6 legs. If you have 8 legs, you are not an insect. If you are a millipede, you are not an insect, okay?
Why 6?
That's how we categorize it. Most of them have 6. But we'll actually get to that. I'll show you why they have 6. Compound eyes, meaning eyes that are
Double?
groups of organs that have grouped together to,
Make an image.
well, it's not really making an image, as insects don't generally see images, as they generally see light and movement. So we'll get to that when we start talking about the eyes and any one pair of one. That's supposed to be one pair of damn autocorrect. 1 pair of antennae. Okay. And we have what, giant rhinoceros beetle over here, right?
Me, yeah.
What's that?
That's beautiful.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, so feel free, you can hate insects, but after this class, hopefully you'll totally appreciate them for what they are.
Ew. That is-
Arthropods are I tell you what, after taking entomology, a few classes in entomology, I'm not scared of any bugs. I used to be freaked out of some bugs. I could care less. I know that they have their niches and they do their thing.
Yes.
My wife still freaks out about insects. My brother's wife is like hardcore phobia of any kind of insect. I bought her an entomology book. She read it. It helped. So just to let you know that once you start understanding these alien type creatures, they start to become a little bit more human-like, or not human-like, but Earth-like and animal-like, and we start understanding their functions. Okay, so anyway, Arthropoda, the phylum of arthropod had arrived just after the arrival of vascular plants. Okay, plants that have a phloem and xylem system, right? And this is about a little bit, just slightly less than 400 million years ago. It's about 380 million years ago. And they evolved, insects evolved from a 20-segmented arthropod. Okay, so for a very, very, very long period of time, arthropods were large, usually in aquatic settings, and had 20 segments to them. Or more. There are many other arthropod-like creatures that have more than 20 segments back in history. But insects evolved from a specific one that had 20 segments. Okay? Here's an example of an ancient centipede. This is about 160 million years ago. So, quite evolved from the original showing up of the centipedes. Okay? All centipedes all have poisonous jaws, so this one would have had one too.
Toast.
Okay, why a 20-segmented body? This is one of the most interesting things I find about insects, is the fact of the evolution, okay? So let's look at the schematic or the diagram up top. And what we have is little balls representing the segments of an ancient insect relative. P, of course, being the head, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way down to 19, right? This original arthropod that insects had evolved from had started off with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sets of legs, total of 12 legs, okay? Through evolution, at right about the same time for most of these creatures, these 1, 2, 3 front legs, those segments that had legs on them, those legs started to become modified into different shapes and have different functions than actually walking. Those segments shrank down much smaller and started compacting on each other, and then ended up becoming the mandible, the maxilla, and the labium, which are the mouth structures of an insect. So when you see insect mouth has, jaws on the side, and there's movement on the bottom, and there's an upper lip area. Those were actually originally at one time whole segments of legs, and had evolved into these specialized structures. Okay. Segments 8, 9, 10, or 8 through 19 shrank down to a smaller area, and they became the back plates of insects. Okay? So the last 10, 19 through 9, becomes the abdomen. Okay? Number 19 becomes the stylus, the styli, which is actually in the back, and it's reproductive structure. So that segment turned into a reproductive structure. Cirrus is a cerci right here. And this is like a protective flap for the reproductive structure.
That's for male, female.
Male and female. Number 17 became male claspers, which are little hooks that hold on to the female. Or it became the receivers for the hooks on the female. External genitalia for both sexes became number 16. Out the back with an ovipositor. Females end up having an ovipositor. This is where they release their eggs into the environment through this tube on the back. Well, all I'm saying here is that each one of those sections became a specialized structure. Okay? So we still know insects as having 20 sections of its anatomy. So does that make sense? How it evolved, and I think that's super interesting that the legs ended up becoming modes of eating.
Question.
Yes?
So with the, when it was in its very, very primitive
Yes.
state, how did it eat if it didn't have all these
It-
different?
It had a mouth, but it probably didn't have mandibles. So it probably would have eaten decomposing stuff that was like enzyme, maybe sucking juices out. Very similar to the first stages of the insects that we'll look to on the order list. So it would have probably just been using microorganisms or something. I'm just guessing here, but I would guess it's going to have a mouth, but it's not going to have those movable parts, the mandible for chewing and all that. So it's not going to be able to chew. It's not going to be able to suck. It's not going to be able to lap. It's probably going to be able to just maybe just get liquids out.
And reproduction would be very primitive then.
Yeah, probably asexual reproduction or, you know, you never know. It's so long ago and I don't know enough about it. But I'm sure there was reproductive structures, right, in that section, 16. It just was in its own, there was the sexual organs were in its own section of the body where they eventually became tied into all the other sections as they shrank down and started moving around in the abdomen. Okay?
What does one none means, or what is that?
What were we looking at?
Number one, none.
Noda. Noda. So, we'll get to it when we go to the thorax. Actually, I don't think I bring it up, but I don't think I call it a noda. But number 1, 2, and 3 become, actually no. It would have been number 5.
What is that?
5, 6, and 7.
Uh-huh.
Here's 5, 6, and 7.
Oh, it changed then.
No,
Yeah,
she's
you
looking at the
At the
number,
number up
the number
there.
1 at the bottom of the arrow. It
Oh,
says
none here?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know. Antenna probably more evolved back into the head structure itself.
And there's no brain, right, you said?
Oh yeah, definitely
Oh,
brain.
there is a brain?
Yep.
Wow. Are we gonna see that?
Yes.
Cool.
Insect evolution. Insects derived during the Devonian period, 380 million years ago. There was a massive evolutionary growth during the Cenozoic period. Pull out your handout, not the slides. Let's turn to page 3 through 6.
Are dragonflies good?
Yeah, they're predators.
Let's take colors. It's the color page.
Yeah, the color page. So, as we look at this handout here, we see that, of course, worms and water bears evolved first, then millipedes. The Trilobita, this is an extinct species. We see a lot of fossils of those,
Which
very, very
one?
common to find.
The millipede. Oh.
And then eventually spiders,
Oh, yeah.
breaking off from the arthropoda right about the time that the crustacea and then the hexapoda, which are actual insects, starting to appear.
So it started with the worms?
Yes. So we would have started with worms, with cilia, as a mode of transportation, and those would have evolved into legs, right?
Right.
Okay, so
Makes sense.
I think that the worms has hairs outside of it.
yes, all worms have hairs on the outside. Not all worms, nematodes do not. Okay, so turn to the next page, and we have the wonderful list of the 31 orders. We're going to talk about these today, and how they evolved from one to the next. You can see that there was common ancestors, kind of crisscrossing all the way across during the beginning. So,
So Ilipura or the Protura is the first thing.
yeah, the Protura would be the first insects found, and then eventually ending up with the Hymenoptera, which are the wasps and the ants.
So the Protura is the worm then?
No,
So that's
these are
after
all
the
insects. We'll get to this.
Okay.
Slow down.
Okay.
You're gonna make this take 3.5 hours. Everybody's gonna be angry that we didn't get to look at it.
I drink that.
Okay, so the next page we have an evolutionary kind of scale timeline, right? So we have the arrival of vascular plants showing up about just over 400 million years ago. And then the arrival of ferns and gymnosperms and angiosperms and bryophytes. And then below that we have a list, hi everybody, we have a list of all of the orders. And actually no, these aren't all of the orders. Yeah, they are. We have all of the orders listed there and then their arrival. When they came, you can see that some of them have dashes like the hemiipteroids, which didn't really make it very long. You know, they're totally extinct. These are the ones that are all known across history. And then only the ones that have lines that end at the end of all the way to the right are ones that still appear in our environment.
Still no.
Yeah.
Oh,
So it's essentially fossil records showing the age and the appearance of insects. And what I'm referencing here too is the massive evolutionary growth. If we turn to the next page, if you look at these are all of the orders. It starts, the black line indicates its moment of arrival in the evolutionary scale, its evolutionary timeline. The width of the black coloring indicates diversification and species, divergence. And the CZ, MZ, and PZ to the left indicate Paleozoic, Mesozoic, or Cenozoic time.
oh, for the period.
So, I didn't bring this up because everybody has it in their hand, but we're all looking at the same page. Yeah, so you can see that very late, closer to our, to our arrival, you had this massive divergence in the Coleoptera and in the Hymenoptera and the Diptera, flies, wasps, and beetles, true bugs.
Where's the bees?
And these are in the Hymenoptera. Those are the last ones. You got everything?
Where's
Okay.
Greg?
Thank you.
That would be the Odonano, which would be in the middle.
Oh, got it.
Got it?
I got it.
Okay, so everybody understands that there was a massive growth during that period. Why? Because there was a massive divergence in plants during the same period of time. So you got to figure that they became specialized with hosts, and as hosts started genetically diverging and become unique, the insects followed right along.
Makes sense.
Okay?
All of them.
If we look at the second page of it, so we're going backwards again. And we have this wonderful schematic here. And what this is, everybody's seen one of these before. This is a table that indicates the size of the creatures, indicate the size of the biodiversity found in the environment. So when we look at this, obviously the insects having the most species in an environment. The next biggest one would be down on the left, which are mites and spiders, right? Next one would probably be the what are these snails and stuff? Worms, nematodes, then down to fungi. We can't forget about the bacterium protozoa that's in the water, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then of course we have birds, then reptiles, jellyfish, aquatic worms, fish, sponges, starfish, all that stuff. And then the mammals being the smallest, right? You're pretty close to it. Yeah, mammals the smallest. But it gives you the list in order right there. Prokaryotes, right? Not in order, but the numbers indicating what they are. All right? Numbers of biodiversity. The most abundant form of animal life on Earth, by far, is insects, greater than all animals and plants combined. Right now, there are about 750,000 known species of insect. It's estimated that there's 1 to 80 million possible species. This number, the higher numbers are coming from studies of rainforest treetop environments. We're actually finding so many species up in the rainforest treetops that it's doubling and tripling our current estimations. Okay? Every terrestrial and freshwater environment has insects, and of course we talked about the schematic on page 2.
It's like
It's a gold leaf beetle. I like that one. It's sometimes called the legionnaire beetle. It looks like a Roman soldier
Yeah.
with a
Oh,
shield.
It does, actually.
Very interesting. Numbers about diversity again. Despite their small size, there are lots of biomass. So there's a lot of alive insect cells on the face of this earth, despite actually having them be so small. Right? It's because there's so many of them. This biomass has a direct effect on ecosystem function, even strictly just from decay and nutrient releasing. So as insects die, they release nutrients into the environment, whether they're consumed or decomposed. Right? They never adapted to a marine environment, which is really interesting. They never got into the saltwater thing. Crabs, of course, being closely related to insects, to arthropods, but insects never made it to the ocean.
It's shrimp? No.
It's funny.
Shrimp? No.
So you
I
can
thought that's
space
where
out
they
on
evolved
for
from.
They evolved from centipede-like creatures. So they were probably already on land when they evolved.
Nothing to do with amphibian.
So the beetles, the Coleoptera family, has the largest population, and we'll talk a little bit about that later, but chances are if you see a worm or like a larvae, it's usually going to be a beetle. There's so many beetles on the planet, I mean, it's something like 40,000 species or something. Don't quote me on that, but it's very, very high. Success. Well, their success is because of their small size. They're able to succeed in many environments because they can get into small little niches, find protection, find food sources very easily. It's also success. They have a successful ecology because of their short life cycle, and that means that many generations or over a period of time become adapted to an environment and conditions, and natural selection happens much more rapidly than it does with mammals. They have large reproductive ability. They support variation and selection in evolution. Basically what that means is they make a whole lot of eggs. They make a whole lot of eggs with a whole lot of offspring, and that means that there are more genes out there that could adapt to the environment. Combinations of genes and mutations, which is usually where adaptation comes from. An insect has a mutation that makes it more successful than the next guy, and then it's able to reproduce more readily because of that success, and then it becomes part of the genomic structure. Right? We all understand evolution. Varying life stages. Well, of course, we have the larval stage, the pupa stage, we have the adult stage, we have the egg stage for a lot of insects. So this reduces competition for resources, mostly from its own species. So if the larvae ate the same thing as the adults, chances are the larvae would be outcompeted by the adults. But because they don't eat the same thing, or they're in different environments, that there's not a competition for those resources with the same species.
Do they show emotion, any kind of emotion?
Emotion,
When you slap it, they say, "Oh, loves me."
I strongly encourage you to go find out. That was the question I never expected.
I think there's a wasp in my
Um,
likes me floating around. I really
Do my best. Success! Again, is mainly because a lot of them were able to grow wings, right? Adapt to fly is very rare outside of the insect community. So only a couple mammals fly, and no fish, right? They glide, they don't really fly, right? Actually, mammals don't really fly either, they glide. But hey, let's not get too technical. Sensory sophistication, we're talking something like the antennae on this wonderful moth here. The capabilities surpass any other organism. I mean, when you're talking about spidey sense, This is something that's very, very real to insects. They have this sensory, this ability to, with their senses that far surpasses anything that we can come up with. Science, technology, they are blowing us away on that level. Evolutionary interactions with other organisms. Convolution results in specialization and speciation. So this is saying evolutionary interactions with like plants, right? Or other mammals. I mean, for an example, you have the human head lice, which is an insect, evolved to only live on the human head, and that's its only environment. So specialization and speciation, divergence of. Okay, so adaptation of the appendages as well. Mouth parts, wings, legs become highly specialized. A lot of species have some of these specialized structures that no other species has. And that's why they're able to be successful, because they have that one thing that they're able to do better than everybody else. Or they're able to smell something better than everybody else. Or they can fly faster than everybody else, or what have you. Everybody has something special about them, right? Okay, let's talk a little bit about the importance of entomology. Why is it important to study
Oh, look at that.
bugs? That is a praying mantis.
That is
I'm
so
dancing
nice.
with stars.
A dancing with study. Doing either a defense or mating dance. Yeah.
So that's the legs that became the mouth? These things?
That's the one Jen when he did.
What?
No, that's.
These are the legs that became the mouth? You know,
Where's the 6 legs?
No, those are the legs.
I mean-
And then the mouth at one point was legs.
Mm.
Okay, I got you.
Gotcha.
Economic importance. Okay, many insects are beneficial, right? And some are regarded as pests. Most are beneficial. Very few are regarded as
These are
pests.
beneficial.
Here. Less than 0.1% is regarded as a pest, whether it be
Oh, but that's so
a parasite, eating on your flesh, or eating your bugs, some sort of pest. Less than 0.1% of the insects known cause problems for us. Okay, so why hate on them so much? Remember this, when you got a bug and it's driving you nuts, and just know that, it's a pest, it's flying in your face, that's a pest. Okay, a gnat is a pest. So even those make up this much of the population. So just know that beneath your feet as you walk, there's hundreds and hundreds of them down there that are doing wonderfully awesome things for you. Okay? Most are beneficial or have an indirect influence on humans. Of course, there's the economic importance, advantageous effects and detrimental effects. Things that go well and things that go bad, right? There's a wonderful example of soybean aphid. Wind blows them in, you can tell where it landed and which direction the wind blows. Right?
Rose beetles.
Look at that one, yum, yum, yum.
Oh.
Advantageous effects, of course, we have pollination, right? We wouldn't have food if it wasn't for insects, plain and simple. We would not have vegetables because we would not have pollination. We would not have insects bringing fungi or bacteria to the root structure of plants so that they can help the growth of plants and all that stuff. Production of useful products like
Honey.
Silk is good.
honey,
So.
silk,
Food.
and of course we have food, right?
Yeah.
If anybody's ever spent any time in Southeast Asia, you know that this is very, very common to see, and in Mexico also as well.
I
So
had
if you've
that
done any South,
I had breakfast.
I want to say
Mhm.
Africa, huge portion of their protein comes from insects. So when you start wrapping your head around it, it includes sections of Eastern Europe as well. So Western Europe and the United States pretty much are the only societies that don't regularly eat whole insects as a food source. So, they're not that bad, really. Of course, we have nutrient cycling, right? We have insects breaking down leaves so that those nutrients can be broken down by those materials can be broken down by microorganisms, and those nutrients released into the environment. And then of course decoration, right? Some people in lots of cultures use insects as decoration, butterfly wings, and all these wonderfully colorful things. Every 17 years in Illinois, you see people walking around with the cicada earrings. You know, the little red cicadas that come around every 17 years.
The Egyptians used the beetle, yeah, for, the real rare beetle.
So the stinky.
There's a red
Scarab.
guy that comes.
Are there any poisonous ones?
What?
Insects?
Poisonous insects?
Should not eat.
Oh, that you shouldn't eat? I don't know enough about it, but I would definitely say yeah. There's probably something that has something in it that would kill an animal that ate it. It would probably do the same to you. But I don't know. I'm not gonna say which one.
Centipedes, what?
Yeah.
So, we have detrimental effects, right? Weevils and stuff get into the food, right? And grubs that get into our food. Not so much a problem for us in the first world, but if you start thinking about folks in the third world, this is a major issue where it causes whole communities to go hungry is because of infestations of insects on their wheat or their flour, their rice or whatever. Also, it was a very big issue until we stopped sailing everywhere, right? When we would go on boats, we would always bring a weevil with us, and then it would always spoil our food, and so that was an issue as well. Damaging of goods, right? So we have wool and paper, books, you got bookworms and stuff like that, eat consumer products. Direct disease of animals, of course we have things like Lyme disease and these awful, awful diseases that insects will bring to animals. And then as well, they can be vectors where they don't really become affected by the disease, or they just pass it on and it really doesn't affect their metabolic activities, right? Of course, we have venoms. We have allergies that people get from insects. The most common one being mosquito. Mosquito bite is an allergic reaction to the saliva of the insect. And then it squirts into the hole to plug it up, right? And then urtication, this is going to be like when you get a rash from touching an insect, it'll exude a chemical that'll cause irritation, most commonly found in caterpillars.
Yeah, caterpillar,
Right? So you touch the wrong caterpillar, it will burn bad.
Okay.
Not so much in Hawaii, but a lot of other places. There's also the nuisance value, right? Just buzzing up in your face. Well, there are places, whole state parks that have been closed down on the mainland because of flies and things like that, is because they're a nuisance and causing major, major problems for tourist sites and this and that. And then of course you got the phobias, like my sister-in-law, who's unfortunately passing this phobia onto her children, which drives me batty. So every summer when I go home, what do you think I do with the niece and nephew? We're always out collecting bugs. I got them the bug collecting kit.
Cool.
So we go out and we look at them, we look under microscopes. I got them microscopes. I got them all this. I try to get them into biology because their parents are just steering them as far away from biology studies as you possibly can. They're scared of everything.
You know the bug chicks?
The bug chicks.
Go to bugchicks.com. They're for young children.
Oh, yeah?
All about their chicks.
Oh, nice.
That study insects, and they've got this whole thing for kids. It's
Sweet.
really nice.
I'm going to get on that. Thank you. And of course, I made a grave error in putting this up here because this is not an insect, right? It's a tick. How many legs does it have? 8. Yes, it is not an insect. It's an arthropod. It's in the spider family. But I put it up there because when you think of... Okay, we're talking about the hierarchical system of general classification, guys. This will bring you back to Biology 101. When you were in school, we talked about how we categorize things. You got the kingdoms. You got the animal kingdom, right? You got the plant kingdom, and you got the fungi kingdom, and you got all these others, right? We have the phyla. Phyla with the like arthropods being a little bit more generalized description of a group. And then we get down to the classes being like insects or spiders or snails. Those are going to be, of course, the classes. And then we get into orders, families, genera, and then it's specifically down to species. So this is just an evolutionary scale. Everybody understands what I'm talking about here, going from one to the next.
Oh, okay. So kingdom would be the whole general insects, right?
It would be animals.
Oh, so we're.
So the animal kingdom, insects, dogs, cats, they're all part of the animal
Oh,
kingdom.
okay.
And then as we go into phyla, we go into the arthropods, and we get into mammals, right? And you get into birds.
Okay.
And so they okay. So this is just an indication of the hierarchical system, because today we're going to talk heavily about the orders.
What's that picture?
That is a picture of a fly.
That's a blue fly?
That is a fly that has blue eyes. Moving on.
Ooh.
That's a 504.
So, we're getting back to arthropods, right? So, important classes of arthropods. I'm now educating you about the classes, right? So, in arthropod, which is the phyla, so we have kingdom of animal, then we have the phyla arthropod, and then we get into the classes. So we have included in there are the arachnids, which would be spiders and mites. Okay. They have 2 body segments, not 3, not 20, 2. Head, thorax. They have 8 legs and no antennae. Okay.
So spiders sense with their legs more then? Like where's their, since they don't
They
have
sense every single hair is a sensory organ on all arthropods. Coleopoda, so the centipedes, they have many body segments, and there's 1 pair of legs on each segment. 1 pair, 1 on each side. 1 pair of antennae, and they always have poison jaws. If you find centipedes in your environment, you are doing things right. Okay? Means you have decomposition. Means you have a lot of soil organic matter breaking down. It means you have a lot of insects that break down soil organic matter, like cockroaches, like the big cockroaches like this guy here, right?
Ew.
Everybody hates these,
Yes, you
right?
do not.
These are the best thing for your garden ever,
Yeah.
because they break down the leaves
Yeah.
that eventually get broken down by microorganisms. So if you want your microorganisms to break down the whole leaves themselves, or have these guys come along and break them down real fast, and then you have more nutrient availability. So if you find centipedes, you probably have a lot of those, which means things are going well for your farm. Okay? Okay. Diplopods, these are the millipedes, many segment bodies. The only difference between them and the centipedes is they have 2 pairs of legs for each segment.
And they're not poisonous, right? When they bite you, you don't get.
I'm not going to say if they are or not. I know that I think there's some millipedes that are poisonous. I don't know about here.
But still watch out, don't pick them up with my hands.
Would the cell bugs, are they in that diplopod?
Yeah, that's the roly-polies.
Yeah.
I have a lot of those in the compost pile.
Potato bugs
They're
different.
kind of
Is
red.
there, when they rose
Well,
up?
mine are gray.
Yeah, they refer to as roly-polies. Those things are referred to so many different names. You guys call them potato bugs because there's a bug called a potato bug.
Pill bug.
That if you go to the mainland, potato bug is a specific
This
kind
is
of
super
Because I
potato
thought
bug.
those in my
Okay.
compost.
Yeah, we also call
Yeah,
pill
centipedes.
bugs common.
Oh,
I
that's
thought
a,
those were
no, that's a
centipedes rolled
millipede,
up.
but the one I'm talking
No.
about is
The
a,
pill bugs, yeah.
yeah, little pill bug, little gray.
So it's
They're
good
not
if you
that
have
long.
millipedes then in your.
Yeah. So these are going to be
They're good.
these are predators as well. So they eat smaller
Yeah,
insects.
those are rolls.
Yeah. And then crustaceans, like crabs, right? Varying number of hard body segments, varying number of legs, and the difference is for most of the arthropods is they have 2 pair of antennae. So when you think of a lobster or a crab, right? They have the big ones on top and then the 2 in the front that they use to sense on the bottom, and they have the ones that sense up top, right? 2 sets of antennae. And of course we come to insects, which have a 3 body segment, right? We have a head, thorax, where the legs attach to, and then the abdomen, right? 6 legs and 1 pair of antennae.
It has wings, no?
Yeah, insects
That's part
have
of the
wings.
body, or what do you count them as? The wings?
Segments are just like where organs sit, you know. Wings are just an appendage,
Okay.
just like a leg. And they all, wings
Damn.
and legs all attach in the thorax.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
It's the muscle region of the body, but we'll get to that. One pair of a Okay. When we start describing our species, as we do this for almost every other creature on the planet, except for viruses for the most part, we give it a scientific name. It's a binomial nomenclature. 2 names. Binomial, 2 names, that's what it means. Nomenclature.
Oh.
We put the genus name, of course we italicize it, always, always, always. And then we put the species name. For example, the Graphium mylachinus. And that's what we see right over here. So, if you can describe your insects to the order, right, or the genus, that would be great. That would be peachy, because then you can figure out the best plan for dealing with it. If you can just get to the order, which is one step above this, yeah. But when you talk about the species itself, it's going to be genus and species.
Not green deal or black.
Common name. That's a common name. Common names are not found in the scientific community. Very rarely will you ever find the common name behind it indicated on a scientific paper, because, like I said, you call one thing, and then you call another, and then you go to Africa, and everybody calls this thing, the grasshoppers, locusts, and you go to the mainland, they call it grasshoppers, and then, yeah, right? Cicadas, right? Where I'm from, cicadas are different than what they are here. People call them cicadas here. Those, just to let you know, they're not cicadas. The ones in my house, back in Chicago, those were actually cicadas. The ones you guys look at are grasshoppers and that.
Okay.
Yeah, we call them away the cicadas.
Cicadas.
Yeah,
It's like,
You say cicada, I say
cicada. So, the external structure of an insect, of course, there was a whole lot of complicated diagrams I could have put up there, but I'm keeping it really simple for you guys, of course. We have our legs on the bottom connected to, oh, let's not start there. Start at the antenna, which is connected to the head. And then we have mouth parts, which are right in the front. We have the thorax, which is the middle section, and the legs all, and the wings all attached to here. And then the abdomen in the back. Okay? A little more complicated. All arthropods, we're not talking about insects here, we're talking about all arthropods. They all have an exoskeleton, as I mentioned earlier. And the exoskeleton is made up of a series of plates called sclerites. Sclerite would be an example of a sclerite would be right here, this whole plate in the back. Here's a sclerite, here's a sclerite, here's a sclerite. Plates. Jointed limbs, right? We talked about that. And then mouth parts, which are jointed, means they can move. And then lateral symmetry. Bilateral symmetry. What does that mean? Yeah, both sides are exactly the same. So if you cut it down the middle, it's mirror image.
Oh.
Is there anything else I want to highlight in here?
Where's the stinger? You know, before when you showed the wasp,
Uh-huh.
there wasn't the stinger.
It's inside,
There's no stinger with it.
it comes out then and
It comes out, yeah. They don't want it hanging out all the time. They
Yeah,
don't
it
dry
comes
out.
out.
So I want you to realize, that every section of the insect has a name. I don't want to go through them, but you know, each section of the leg has a name. Anybody nursing? You're in nursing?
Surely not.
Okay, so we got tarsus, tibia, femur, right? So very similar to the leg structure of a human. It's the same description, but we'll get to that later.
never know they have an ear.
Yeah, right here.
I saw it in the back, yeah.
Yeah, and actually, it's really cool. It's a membranous piece that vibrates from the air on the outside, right? Just like our it works the same way as our eardrums do, but much more sensitive.
And what's the simple IV versus the compound IV?
We'll get to that.
So you're trying to catch some grasshopper, You wonder, how the heck that bug is jumping forward,
Yeah.
but you're in the back.
He heard you coming down the
Yeah,
road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's far away,
Or do you guys get those tan stick bugs and like you touch them
Yeah.
and they go click, 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 and then the wings come out and fly away?
So, the insect head, here's a nice diagram of an insect head. It is a sclerotized capsule. Sclerotized meaning hard cutin. Hardened cutin. Right? It's made of cutin, and it's a hard capsule. It's like a little hard ball that holds all the organs, just like my head, right?
Right. So it's bones?
No, it is an exoskeleton. So unlike mammals or everything else, the structure of the insect is on the outside shell. It's nothing but ooze on the inside and muscles attached to the outside structure, as opposed to muscles being attached to bone and wrapped in skin.
Yeah.
Is the difference. So the skeleton, the part of the body that holds it upright, is on the outside of the creature versus on the inside. So sclerotized capsule, most insects have a compound eyes on their head. Compound eye, here's a nice highlight of one here, or picture of one, has all of these little omatida on it. Okay, that's what each one of those is called. It's called an omatida. I think they took away my dry erase. Son of a jerks! I was gonna draw you an omatida. It's basically like a cone. It's like a long cone with a glass lens on top, right? With a clear lens on top, and a sensor down at the bottom of the cone. And it's connected directly to the nervous system. So, if light passes over a well, right? The shadow of the light that passes over casts the light at a certain depth of the well, right? So as light passes over, something passes over, you'll see a shadow halfway down the shaft, 3/4 down the shaft, depending on where that light is moving. And if you have 1,000,000 wells pointed in 180 different directions, you have kind of measurement of light moving across all of these different wells. And at the bottom of the well, there's a little sensor. And so it's able to tell light and movement as it is looking out of this tube, right? Out of this well, and looking for light movement up above. So if the movement is to the back right of the animal, only the omatida on that back right side of the ocule, the eye, will see that movement, and it will register there's something moving over there. Because it knows what direction those are pointed, right?
Wow.
There's less resolution, of course, on the eyes of insects than on vertebrates, but much more acute perception of movement, which is beneficial during flight. Okay, so they don't see the same way we do. They certainly don't see light the same way we do. They don't. The cones, the omatida, don't absorb the same light that ours does. So they see a different light spectrum than we do. So it's not. Don't think of it as if the insect is seeing things like a dog or a human. It's very, very, very different. UV light is seen pretty readily by insects, infrared as well.
Most of them have two big eyes.
Big eyes.
They're using it the same as humans, where you can judge distance.
It's because it's curved that it can judge distance. It's because you have two eyes you can judge distance. It has hundreds of thousands of eyes on each one, so where we can say, oh, that's exactly that distance. So if I'm throwing a dart to a dartboard, and I can almost hit bullseye every single time, right? Because I can see how far it is because of my two eyes. Insect could do that so much more readily. Would be able to throw it to the millimeter every single time because they can measure depth much better than we ever can, because we only have two ocules and they have hundreds of thousands of them. Okay, so they can see to the millimeter on distance. So that's why an insect can fly around and then land on a blade of grass.
Right.
And it's like it's no problem, right?
Right.
Jose.
What is about the simple eye?
Yeah, so that's the ocilii down here. Usually has 2 or 3 of them. Ocilii. And it usually just measures low light and light intensity. These are old eyes. These are eyes that the Plotura and many other insects everything below the Platura, all the arthropods before insects generally don't have compound eyes. They only have these ocelli, which can see light and dark, or can see a shadow, can tell if it's daytime or nighttime. That's all it's really good for. But if you have a bunch of them all over your face, and you can tell, it helps in the perception of light in addition to the compound eyes. Okay? So compound eyes evolved from ocelli-like eyes. These eyes would have been maybe, like if you think about it, you know, these insects that, they are insects, they live in caves, right? They don't use their compound eye, so they've actually evolved to get rid of it. There are sockets where they used to be, and where the ocelli, where it would be smaller on a regular insect, much, much, much bigger. And so they evolved to get rid of the compound eye and then use the ocelli exclusively because there's no light in the cave. And they're actually able to get little bits of tell little bits of movement in the darkness. Because there's photons in there, in the darkness. There's always photons in the darkness. Okay, so external structure of the head. Of course, we have the antennae. They vary morphologically. They are used to detect low chemical signals. Insects will release chemical signals to communicate with other insects. And so these antennae can actually pick up on those chemical signals. Just like, I don't want to get too deep, but there's hairs all over the insect as well. And the hairs do the same thing. They are either movement sensory or chemical sensory. I wish I had markers, but a hair would go down into the exoskeleton, and if it was a chemical sensor, there'd be a little bit of a space around where the hair goes in the hole, and then these special receptors around the hair. And then if it was a movement receptor, as the hair moved, it moved a special nerve. And that is why you can't swat a fly. Is because you're moving the air at the fly as you're swatting it, and it goes, hey, that air all the way over there is moving because your movement of your hand all the way up here moved the air down there, and the hair picked up and took off.
That's like
Unless
the
you-
closer you are, the
unless you
swat.
pull a hand of it.
Yeah, exactly. We all know how to
Chop-
swat a
chop-
fly, right? Chopsticks. Of course, communication.
Oh, yeah.
Not like ears. Don't think of it like ears, but more of like a chemical communication, right? And then they use it for finding host plants and as well as mates. Host plants will give off phytochemicals, which the system can pick up on. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about the mouth parts real quick. Clypeus being on the front of the mouth. This is going to be like above the upper lip. Labrum being the upper lip area. Mandible being the chewing, grasping part of the mouth. And then the maxilla, which is in the back, which is kind of like the bottom jaw. Okay. And the labium used to be legs for grasping and holding of material. We'll get a little bit deeper into that.
Do they have teeth?
No, not like you're thinking. So, there are many different kinds of mouth parts. Okay, there's the mandiblate and then the holistate. Mandiblate are for chewing insects, like right here. So you have the mandible on the side, the labrum, the upper lip right here. And so a chewing, like an example would be a beetle or ant or wasp or something like that, right? You have sucking, which these like butterflies and moths, right? Butterflies and moths have a proboscis.
For the hibiscus.
For the hibiscus. You got to understand that at some point during the evolution, this looked similar to this, and it had evolved to get rid of the mandibulate and to get rid of the maxilla on the back, and only have the labrum on the front. And this long part here is the is part of the labrum. Okay. We have piercing sucking like an aphid, or yeah, an aphid, or a mosquito. Right. So you have the labrum, which is the upper lip right up here up front, and then labium, which is right here in the middle, and then piercing sucking stylets. These are usually going to be saw-like for a mosquito or for an aphid, also kind of saw-like for being able to pierce into cells. And then, of course, we have the lapping, like a bee. We have the labrum in the front, some mandibles just on the side, and then the maxilla, the back part, ends up becoming like these long filamentous ribbons, and then they actually have a tongue in the middle, which is siphoning.
That's from their mouth of the bee, or it's from the stomach?
That's the whole mouth.
Oh, wow.
Okay? So we have chewing, lapping, and sucking. Let me put this up and see if I can get a link here. Oh, you know what? This was that website that doesn't work with Macs. Hold on. I have it up here.
One good thing on the carpet, we have lots of those.
Dell's company blow up. All right.
Do you have those big snails too?
Mhm.
Thompson, you see them crossing the ground like,
Escargot.
no?
Did you ever eat the escargot?
No.
There are escargot. No.
They're big. Huge. Or if you have like plastic
I
somewhere on the
agree.
ground for a while, and you pick them up, you got tiny sleds on them, yeah.
Search it real quick.
Yeah, first time I saw that. I didn't know they brought them over to see. Huh?
What's that? That's not.
Blood, yeah. I did something really dumb, I made like a double raised cinder block. And I learned that's the worst because the beetle, frog, and snail. So I glued that copper
Okay,
tape around it.
we got this thing. Listen up, listen up. Okay, we're on a time constraint here. All right, so we're gonna go through, skipping over the introduction here.
Ready.
Long parts of all modern
Shoosh.
derived from a basic set of 5 structural
I don't care. I'm trying to talk. You're talking over me. I already talked about this stuff. Okay. So the grasshopper has a primitive mandibulate. This could be the chewing, right? Chewing variety. Note that the mandibles move from side to side and have overlapping edges that cut like scissors. Grinding and crushing.
Looks different, the colors.
So here's the movement as it's on the face. Of course, we have the maxilla in the back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Moving. Labrum up front, and let's go ahead and take it apart.
Oh, nice. Wow.
So those are the different parts. As they move, right? So it has this post mentrum right here. This is going to be, like I said, this bottom lip kind of just lays out and lets the food, scoops the food into the mouth. So we have a chewing predator-like ground beetle. Usually a predator. How do you know a predator? Ooh, it's gonna have these things, these wonderful big
Oh.
chompers, right? So the mandibles, usually you can see what the plant or what the insect eats based upon the mandibles.
Oh.
So if it's going to be more of a plate-like with small teeth for grinding, or is it going to have more of like a big serrated blade-like structure? That's going to be the difference between a chewing like a grasshopper or a predator like the ground beetle. Either way, they're both chewing, right? Hey, look at him move. Okay.
But the beetle, when I pick it up, like it seems to be like chewing all over, like the whole body. Doesn't feel like just one area.
Just the mouth is the only part that chews. It might be trying to pinch you
Yeah.
or grab you.
Yeah.
I like that,
And that's from all parts then.
When we talk about the dragonflies, we'll get to it, but dragonflies are super unique because they're nymphs, right? They're naiads. The adolescent dragonfly has a major ecological kind of importance to aqua environments or freshwater environments. So here's the mouth of the nymph of the.
What is good about it for the water?
It's a predator in the water. It's a top predator in the water. So it pretty much eats anything, including small fish.
Oh, even small fish?
Yeah. So if you see how it scoops, it'll go out and grab pieces of stuff, little amoebas and all that, and then also larger animals. Yeah.
That's really neat.
My friend was like, "That is actually, ooh, don't like
These are mosquito, right? Mosquitoes are unique because they have a protective layer on the outside of the labrum. And you'll see that the sheath, it's actually called a sheath, like a short sword sheath, gets removed before it gets pushed into the body,
Oh,
right?
that's how they do it.
That's how they do it.
Yeah. That's why you see them crouching down like that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, so get down,
I thought that was a
they're getting
Lego.
set,
Yeah.
they're getting set.
Yeah.
Well, first thing they're doing is setting up shop with their sensors.
Ah.
Okay. Second thing they're doing is finding a spot to go into in the section that's in front of them. They go between the cells as much as possible. And then when they pierce in, like I said, they need to have enough pressure to move that sheath and bend it back.
That's when you whack them.
It's when you whack 'em?
They're in there, it's like, okay.
It's actually better when it comes to mosquitoes to not whack them if they're already biting you. You'll get a much smaller bite than if they're already in there. Yeah. Because what happens is, these glands that is the saliva that is squirted into the hole when it leaves is what you're reacting to, right? This is the back of my head. And then the what was I saying?
Don't smack them.
Oh yeah, right. So you have these glands and they're full of the saliva, and then if you smack them, it actually pushes all the saliva into your wounds. Versus a small, minuscule amount, which is what it's going to lay into your wound. So if you see it and you see the blood growing in the back, let it be, let it do its
Let it
thing.
fly.
Yeah, let it. And as it's about to take off, you get
Because
them.
it's heavy with the blood, yeah.
They slow down much better. Okay, so there's piercing and sucking. Just know that, yeah, it's a mosquito, but aphids and almost all of the insects that are vectors and they cause disease transfer are all going to be these piercing, sucking type variety insects. Got our honeybee, right? Adapted for licking nectar. So it has chewing mandibles, right? And that long rivet, those long ribbons, right, used for lapping.
So that comes out of the mouth? Not
Comes
the
out
body?
of the mouth. It's actually part of the mouth.
Okay.
It's external. Don't think it's internal and then it
Oh,
gets oozed out.
it's
It gets
not.
unrolled from the outside. And then these ribbons, just kind of like a paintbrush, go around and grab up nectar and like a dog lap it in.
Oh.
They eat nectar, they pollinate because they eat nectar. They're not going for the pollen necessarily. Unless you're a honey, well I guess if you're a honeybee, yes you are, but most don't. Did I miss one? Honeybee, piercing, sucking. Butterflies and moths, right? It unrolls.
Oh, I never seen it roll up.
Right? So it'll get in and get nectar with that. And of course we have the flies, sponging and lapping. Gino talked about this last class, got the proboscis, right, that comes on out. And this is actually just the proboscis extended. It's not actually the bag, which is at the end of the mouth, gets pushed out and then brings that bag and brings it back into the mouth part.
So the bag is inside the mouth.
Yeah, the bag on the inside. It's covered in enzymes and it's covered in saliva. And that's how it laps. So like a bumblebee will lick, and this will actually shove a proboscis out, lap it up, and then suck it back in, and then absorb those nutrients through the skin wall.
So it doesn't do any piercing.
No piercing
So
at
then the
all.
flies that like attack the cows that leave larvae or on the horses that leave bots and stuff, it's a whole different animal.
What they have is it's the same structure and they're doing the same thing, but on the outside of this, it won't stay extended. Sorry about that. But as it's extended, it has serrated blades on the outside, and it will shove that into the skin and rip the skin and then the bag will come out and suck up the blood or whatever.
And that's where they carry the disease too, or that's more in the legs?
Yeah, that's where they carry it. Would be in the
And
proboscis.
In the movie The Fly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that movie.
Oh.
Spray the
I grew up in the 80s, so I'm a Jeff Goldblum guy. I like that one better than the old one.
Shit's an old one. though.
I know, I've seen it. I'm just more of a fan. Alright, so let's switch back over.
Flies, if you're closer, you whack them better than if you come from far away.
Okay, so you understand a little bit about mouth parts. Why is this important, guys? I've mentioned it many times.
Figure out what they're eating.
Yeah, you figure out how they eat, and you can figure out if those insects are detrimental to your system. Okay, if they are lapping, and if they're lapping, they're probably not hurting your crops. They might even be beneficial. A lot of lapping insects will actually lay their larvae on the inside of other insect eggs and that kind of thing. So you got to be really careful of what you're shooting poisons at and all that good stuff. Okay. So, I want to, today during the lab, I want you to see if you can identify to order, and then if you can tell me, of course, what the mouth part of the insect is. Okay? So let's talk a little bit about external structure. We've talked about the head. Now we're talking about the thorax. Thorax being the middle section of the insect. It has 6 sclerites. Sclerites, if I ever said scleratides, it's going to be hard cutin layers. The 6 sclerites that make up the abdomen are going to be 3 plates on top, 2 on the sides, and 1 on the bottom. Okay? 3 plates on top, there's walls on the side, and then you have the one for the belly, right? It's actually more like you think of the chest, the thorax. Right? The construction allows for attachment and contraction of muscles for wings and legs. I had a better picture than this, and I don't know why I didn't put it up. Maybe it's on the next slide. But basically what happens is took my markers. The thorax, if you think of it as a hollow tube, right? There's nothing in, think of nothing in it. The wings are attached to the back 2 sections, the mesa and meta thorax sections. On the inside of the thorax, you can just figure almost something like rubber bands going from the base of the wing to the belly of the thorax, all the way across. And so it's just like a tendon that's pulled through the thorax. And the legs are the same thing. They are just so the whole thorax is just this crisscross of rubber bands, kind of like things, right? And so the brain tells the body when to pull these rubber bands, and it makes the wing go like this. It's the construction of the wing by pulling on